The first lie everyone believed was that Mara Ellison wanted the gown. It made sense from a distance. She stood too close to the velvet rope. She stared too long at the bodice. She asked to see the lining of a dress priced higher than her yearly rent. When security stepped toward her, she reached into her bag like a woman desperate to prove she had a right to be there. So the brides watching from the aisle decided she was jealous. The vendors decided she was unstable. The expo director decided Vanessa Crane had been right to warn him. And Vanessa, standing beside the Celeste gown in a white suit tailored to look effortless, let all of them believe it. "This woman has been making claims against our brand for months," Vanessa said gently. "We've tried to handle it privately." Mara almost admired the performance. Almost, because Vanessa did not sound cruel. She sounded responsible, protective, professional. The kind of woman a room full of sponsors would trust. Mara looked at the gown again. The outside was different enough to fool anyone who only saw beauty. The lace had been changed. The sleeves were gone. The train was longer. Even the name had been polished into something marketable. But inside that dress, beneath the satin and boning, was a seam Mara had known since childhood. Her mother used to call it the moon seam. Ruth Ellison had drawn it first in pencil, then cut it in muslin, then stitched it by hand while Mara fell asleep under the work table. Now Vanessa Crane was calling it innovation. Mara did not want the gown. She wanted the name that had been removed from it. And before the night ended, someone in that room would have to say it out loud. Julian Price, the expo director, asked her to leave with the careful softness people used when they wanted cruelty to look like procedure. Mara did not argue. Arguing would give Vanessa a better story. She let 2 security guards guide her past the white roses, past the photographers, past the velvet rope around the Celeste gown. As she stepped away from booth 17, one folded photocopy slipped from her hand and landed face up on the polished floor. A young woman in a champagne, satin suit looked down. Mara recognized her from the banners outside the convention center. Celia Grant, 2 million followers. A wedding countdown sponsored by half the room. The bride chosen to wear the Celeste gown on the runway at 7:45. The page at Celia's feet showed a curved pattern piece marked in Ruth's handwriting. Celeste left inner bodice. Revision 3. Celia frowned for half a second. Vanessa saw it. She bent quickly, picked up the page, and handed it back to Mara with 2 fingers. "You should be more careful with old paper," Vanessa said. Mara took it. "I am," she said. "That's why I brought copies." The smile left Vanessa's mouth for less than a second. Then the black curtain closed behind Mara, and the noise of the bridal expo dulled into a muffled, expensive hum. The service hallways smelled of cardboard, hairspray, and hot lights. Garment racks lined one wall. Someone had left a paper cup on a crate labeled Runway Florals. On the opposite wall, a printed schedule had been taped crookedly above a power strip. 7:45 p.m. Vanessa Crane Bridal, closing look, the Celeste gown. 8:10 p.m. VIP sponsor reception. 8:20 p.m. signature partnership announcement. Mara read the times twice. So that was why Vanessa looked calm. This was not just a runway, it was a handoff. The gown would move under the lights, cameras would catch Celia turning in it, sponsors would applaud, and 25 minutes later a contract would turn a stolen pattern into a branded collection. Mara sat on an empty equipment case and opened her bag. Inside were the things she had promised herself she would not need: printed emails, an unpaid invoice with Ruth Ellison's name at the top, scans of old-fitting photos, and beneath them, wrapped in tissue paper, the brown pattern book Ruth had left behind. For months after the funeral, Mara had avoided touching that book. It had sat above the closed sewing machines, gathering dust beside jars of buttons Ruth sorted by color because disorder made her nervous. Mara told herself she was preserving it. The truth was simpler. She could not bear the smell of pencil lead and muslin. Ruth had never been famous. She made dresses for women who saved for 2 years to feel beautiful for one day. She altered gowns bought secondhand, rescued hems from basement floods, and built corsets for brides who cried because nothing in the boutique fit them right. But Ruth wanted one design with her name on it. Just one. The Celeste pattern had been that hope. Mara remembered the winter it took over their kitchen. Brown paper taped to the floor. Muslin pinned over chair backs. Ruth working the crescent seam again and again, chasing a curve that would hold the bodice without cutting into the body beneath it. A dress should remember there's a person inside it, Ruth had said. When Vanessa's brand contacted Ruth, Mara had been young enough to think opportunity arrived cleanly. The emails sounded respectful. Ruth mailed samples, fitting notes, construction sketches, and a tech pack because the brand wanted professional documentation. Then came the delay. Then the cancellation. Then the partial payment, called a courtesy fee. The company said the concept no longer fit their seasonal direction. Ruth folded the letter once, placed it in a drawer, and never mentioned the gown again. 6 months later, she was sick. A year later, the workroom was quiet. Mara opened the pattern book to the page she knew by touch. Celeste. Ruth's handwriting leaned slightly to the right. Beside the title were measurements, arrows, tiny corrections, and one note Mara had read so many times it no longer felt like writing. Do not flatten the curve. The body is not a wall. Mara smiled, and it hurt. When she first saw Vanessa's teaser online, she had not wanted to believe it. The photo showed lace, a sweep of skirt, and the angle of the bodice. Not enough for most people to accuse. But Mara had seen the old pull under the left rib. So she emailed the brand, once with questions, again with documents, a third time with the invoice number and Ruth's archived correspondence attached. The first reply thanked her for reaching out. The second said the matter had been reviewed. The third was not a reply. It was a warning from Vanessa's office telling Mara to stop contacting staff before the brand considered further action. That was when Mara understood. They were not confused. They were prepared. Through the gap in the curtain, she could see booth 17 again. Vanessa was speaking to Celia now, one hand resting lightly near the gown, as if she had created it by touch. Celia nodded, but her eyes drifted once toward the service corridor. Toward Mara, toward the page. Vanessa had picked up too quickly. Mara slipped the pattern book back into her bag and stood. She had less than 2 hours before the runway. She did not have a stage. She did not have a sponsor badge. She did not have the kind of last name that made people pause before dismissing her. But she had her mother's work. She had the invoice Vanessa hoped no one would read. She had the emails proving Ruth had sent more than a sketch. And now she had seen Vanessa flinch at a name she claimed did not matter. Mara looked at the printed schedule one more time. Tidan Sischerwufen. If the gown reached the runway under Vanessa's name, the lie would become public. But public lies had one weakness. They needed witnesses. Mara picked up her bag, turned away from the exit, and walked deeper into the service corridor, toward the fitting rooms. Julian Price had built the bridal summit on one rule: no scandals before the runway. For 11 years, that rule had kept designers calm, sponsors comfortable, and brides convinced the glitter was effortless. He knew drama came with weddings. But Vanessa Crane had arrived with something cleaner than drama. She had arrived with a folder. It sat on his temporary office desk, cream-colored, branded, and frighteningly organized. Inside were printed emails from Mara Ellison, highlighted in yellow. There was a complaint summary from Vanessa's legal department. There was a photograph of Mara outside one of the brand's boutiques 2 weeks earlier, cropped tightly so the security guard beside her looked like proof of a threat instead of proof she had been turned away. Vanessa stood across from him, composed and patient, as if she were helping him make a difficult but necessary decision. "I understand your position," she said. "You want to be fair. I respect that. But we have brides here. Sponsors. Press. If she creates a scene around the closing look, it damages everyone. Julian looked through the glass wall toward the expo floor. Booth 17 glowed under soft lights. The Celeste gown was drawing a crowd again. She claims the dress came from her mother's work, he said. Vanessa's expression softened in exactly the right place. And that's sad, she replied. Grief can make people attach meaning to things that resemble what they lost. The sentence sounded compassionate. It also closed a door. Julian wanted to believe he was dealing with a wounded daughter, not a theft accusation. That version was easier. It let him protect the event without asking why Vanessa had brought a prepared file before Mara ever stepped near the gown. On the last page was a note from Vanessa's office. Recommended action. Restrict backstage access and notify security if subject attempts contact with talent. Subject. Not Taylor, not claimant, not Mara. He signed the temporary restriction form because the sponsor representative from Bellwether House would arrive at 6:30, and the last thing the summit needed was uncertainty near the closing look. Vanessa thanked him with a small nod. She did not look relieved. She looked ready. Across the expo floor, Celia Grant stood before a mirror while two assistants adjusted the pearl clips in her hair. Her phone was propped on a white display cube, filming a behind-the-scenes reel. Tonight is going to be unreal, Celia told the camera. Vanessa Crane is letting me wear the Celeste gown before anyone else. I can't even explain how special this is. Vanessa appeared behind her in the mirror. You don't have to explain special, she said warmly. You just have to wear it. Celia laughed, pleased, but Vanessa was already checking sightlines, cameras, sponsor badges, every moving piece that would turn one dress into a headline. The plan required more than fabric. It required Celia's face, Julian's caution, Bellwether's money, and the expo catalog already printed in 5,000 glossy copies. It required everyone to say the same phrase before they had time to question it. New exclusive design. Vanessa had made sure those words appeared everywhere, on the booth plaque, the runway card, the sponsor packet, even the email invitation sent to VIP brides. If the gown walked at 7:45 and Bellwether signed after the reception, the Celeste line would not be a sample anymore. It would be a launch, and Mara Ellison would become background noise. In the service corridor, Mara reached a staff door and found it locked with a keypad. Beyond it, she could hear rolling racks and clipped voices. Backstage was close enough to smell steam from the garment press, but the restriction had already moved faster than she had. A security guard approached with a tablet. Miss Ellison. Mara turned. I've been asked to make sure you return to the public hall or exit the venue. By Julian Price? By event management. That meant Vanessa had reached him first. Mara looked at the hallway behind the guard. On his tablet, beside her name, was a small red label, Access Restricted. For a moment, anger rose so quickly, she almost welcomed it. Anger would be easier than standing there with her mother's book pressing against her ribs through the canvas bag. But anger was what Vanessa wanted. Mara nodded once. Where is the public hall entrance? The guard pointed. She walked in that direction until he turned away. Then she stopped beside a rack of garment bags waiting for alterations pickup. A young assistant in black passed by carrying a box of pearl buttons. Mara recognized her from booth 17, the girl who had looked at the fallen pattern page too long. The assistant slowed. You're Ruth Ellison's daughter, she said quietly. Mara did not move. The girl glanced toward the corner camera, then lowered her voice. My name is Lily Harper. I work for Vanessa's archive team. Mara's hand tightened around the strap of her bag. Lily swallowed. There's something you should know before they put that dress on Celia. Lily Harper kept the box of pearl buttons pressed against her stomach as if it could hide the fact that her hands were shaking. Mara lowered her voice. What do you know? Lily glanced at the red access label still glowing on the guard's tablet. Not enough to fix it. Enough to know she lied. Before Mara could answer, a headset crackled nearby. Lily, booth 17 needs the button tray now. Lily slipped a catalog insert into Mara's hand as she passed. Beneath a photo of the Celeste gown, 3 words were printed in silver. New exclusive design. Lily whispered without looking back. Don't let them keep calling it a sample. Then she was gone. Mara stood in the corridor with the insert in her hand, feeling Vanessa's plan sharpen. If the gown was only a private prototype, Vanessa could deny everything. If it was printed, promoted, sponsored, and walked under lights, it became a claim, a public one. Mara turned toward the expo floor. At booth 17, Vanessa's brand had gathered a half-circle of brides, stylists, bloggers, and sponsors around the gown. Celia stood near the display, signing a card for a bride who wanted a photo. Mara knew walking back in would look foolish. That was the point. Vanessa had made the hallway unsafe by paperwork. The only place left was the room where people could witness what happened next. Mara moved through the crowd until she reached the edge of the booth. Celia saw her first. The influencer's smile tightened, not with cruelty this time, but with confusion. She had seen Vanessa snatch the pattern page away too fast. I need 30 seconds, Mara said. Celia's public smile returned automatically. This really isn't the place. It is exactly the place, Mara said, holding up the catalog insert. Did Vanessa tell you this gown was still just a sample? A few people turned. Vanessa heard her name and appeared from behind the display wall with perfect timing. Mara, she said, with a sigh gentle enough to sound exhausted. Please don't do this to yourself. The sentence worked. People did not hear an accusation. They heard concern. A successful woman asking an unstable one to stop making a scene. Mara placed the insert on the white pedestal beside the velvet rope. This says new exclusive design. Vanessa looked at it once. Because it is. Then who drafted the inner bodice? A stylist gave a short laugh. Is this about sewing terms? Mara opened her bag and removed one photocopied page. Not the whole book, not the fragile original. Just the left inner bodice piece, the same one Ruth had marked years ago. Vanessa's eyes went to the page. So did Celia's. This pattern was created by Ruth Ellison before your brand canceled her contract, Mara said. You changed the lace, the sleeves, and the train. But the structure underneath is still hers. A woman wearing a diamond tennis bracelet leaned toward her friend. Is this the harassment thing? Vanessa did not answer Mara. She answered the crowd. This is why we tried to handle this privately, she said. Miss Ellison has been grieving for a long time. Her mother worked in bridal alterations, and I believe that has made this situation emotionally difficult for her. Her mother worked in bridal alterations. The reduction almost stole Mara's breath. Ruth had drafted, measured, rebuilt, corrected, and saved gowns other designers could not make fit. Vanessa had turned all of that into a sentence small enough to step over. Mara reached for another page, but someone brushed her shoulder. The canvas bag slipped against her hip. 3 photocopies slid out and scattered over the glossy booth floor. This time, the papers did not look like clutter. They looked technical, numbered, dated, covered in Ruth's slanted handwriting. One landed near Celia's silver heel. Celia bent before Vanessa could stop her. The page showed a fitting photo printed beside a pattern note. Ruth Ellison stood in the old workroom, one hand inside a muslin bodice, adjusting the same crescent curve that shaped the Celeste gown. Vanessa stepped forward. Give that back, Celia. The order was too sharp. Several heads turned. Celia looked from the photo to the gown. This time, her eyes skipped the lace and followed the line beneath it. Mara gathered the other pages slowly. She wanted to say more, but the room was not ready to hear everything. If she emptied the bag now, Vanessa would bury the truth under grief, security, and procedure. So Mara picked up the last page and held Vanessa's gaze. You keep saying my mother made alterations, she said. Then why does your closing look match her revision notes? Vanessa smiled again, but the smile no longer reached the people standing closest to her. Julian Price arrived with 2 security guards behind him. Mara, he said, quieter than before, you agreed to return to the public hall. I am in the public hall. You know what I mean. Vanessa turned slightly toward him. Julian, I'm sorry. This is becoming disruptive. Mara looked at Celia. Celia still held the fitting photo. For 1 second, neither woman moved. Then, Celia folded the page carefully and placed it back into Mara's hand instead of Vanessa's. It was not support. Not yet. But it was no longer dismissal. Mara let the guards guide her away from booth 17 a second time. This time, she heard no laughter behind her. Only Celia's voice, small but clear, asking Vanessa, what exactly is a moon seam? No laughter followed her this time, but that did not mean the room believed her. Mara waited until the guard returned to the main aisle. Then she turned back into the service corridor. The hallway was busier now. Assistants pushed garment racks toward the runway doors. Florists carried white roses in plastic buckets. A steamer hissed behind a black curtain. Mara was looking for Lily when she saw the woman with the gray bun. Eleanor Voss stood beside an alterations cart, sorting needles into a magnetic tray. Eleanor, Mara said. The older woman did not turn. It's Mara Ellison. I know who you are. The answer came too fast. Mara stepped closer. You worked with my mother. A long time ago. You saw the Celeste pattern. Eleanor's hand stopped over the tray. A pair of interns rolled a rack of veils between them. Mara waited until they passed. I'm not asking you to fight Vanessa, Mara said. I just need to know if I'm wrong. That made Eleanor look at her. Not fully. Just enough for Mara to see fear. You should go home, Eleanor said. Before they make this worse. They already have. No, Eleanor's voice lowered. They can do more than embarrass you. Mara understood then. NDA. Freelance contract. Legal language broad enough to frighten a woman who still needed work. Mara opened her bag and placed one photocopied page on the cart. Celeste left inner bodice, revision 3. Ruth's handwriting leaned across the corner in pencil. Eleanor stared at it. I have the original book, Mara said. Emails. The unpaid invoice. Fitting photos. But Vanessa keeps calling my mother an alterations worker. Eleanor's mouth moved, but no words came out. Mara wanted to demand the truth. The daughter in her wanted to ask how many people had watched Ruth disappear from her own work and called it business. But Eleanor's hands were shaking. So, Mara stepped back. My mother trusted you, she said. That's all. For a moment, Eleanor looked away. Then she reached into the pin cushion and removed a small silver safety pin. Without speaking, she laid it across the curved seam printed on the page. Not at the side seam, not at the waist. At the hidden inner stay beneath the left rib. Exactly where Ruth would have marked tension during a fitting. Mara's throat tightened. You remember. Eleanor pulled her hand back. I remember a box. Mara froze. A brown archive box, Eleanor said, eyes lowered. Ruth Ellison's name on the side. Celeste development notes. Where is it? I don't know. Last week, Vanessa had storage pull several old development boxes. After that, I saw Lily carrying one toward the brand suite. Lily. From beyond the runway doors, a coordinator called Celia Grant fitting in 15. Eleanor flinched. Is the Celeste gown in alterations now? Mara asked. Eleanor picked up a strip of ivory boning and snapped it lightly between her fingers. If they alter the side seam, she said, the bodice will fight them all night. Mara understood. The team would try to fix the visible pull in the wrong place. And Celia? She'll blame the dress. Vanessa will blame whoever touched it. Then Eleanor looked at Mara for one clear second. Your mother would have fixed the inner stay. The hallway doors opened. Lily Harper stepped out carrying a garment bag marked Celeste Final Fit. Mara slipped the pinned page into her bag. Eleanor turned back to her needles. But before Mara left, the older woman pushed the magnetic tray toward the edge of the cart. On it lay a staff badge. Alterations, support. No name. Mara took it without making Eleanor ask herself to be brave twice. The staff badge felt too light for what it could cost Eleanor. Mara clipped it to her cardigan and followed the sound of garment steamers toward the fitting rooms. No one stopped her at first. In backstage chaos, confidence mattered more than permission. Lily walked ahead with the garment bag marked Celeste Final Fit. She did not look back, but when she reached the alterations room, she held the door open 3 seconds longer than necessary. Mara slipped inside. The room was narrow, bright, and crowded with mirrors. Celia Grant stood on a low platform in the Celeste gown, while 2 assistants knelt near the hem. The dress looked perfect from the doorway. Then Celia shifted. A small crease pulled beneath her left rib. Mara saw it immediately. One assistant pinched the side seam. Another reached for the waistline. Both were looking at the place where the problem appeared, not the place where it began. Vanessa stood near the mirror, phone in hand, watching more than helping. "We're losing time," she said. "Celia walks in 40 minutes. "It's digging in," Celia said, trying to keep her voice light. "Right here." She touched the left side of the bodice. Vanessa smiled at her reflection. "Luxury structure always feels different the first time. You'll adjust." Celia's smile faded a little. The head fitter knelt again. "We can take a 1/4 inch from the side." "No," Mara said. Every hand stopped. Vanessa turned. For 1 second, nobody spoke. Not because the room was shocked, but because everyone was calculating who had allowed Mara inside. Julian was not there. Security was not there. Only seamstresses, assistants, Lily by the garment rack, and Celia in the dress. Vanessa looked at the badge on Mara's cardigan. "That is not yours." Mara did not answer that. She looked at the fitter. "If you take from the side seam, the bodice will twist by the time she reaches the runway." The fitter frowned despite herself. "And you know that how?" "Because the pressure isn't coming from the side, it's coming from the inner stay." Celia glanced down at the dress. "What does that mean?" "It means the support layer inside is fighting the curve of your body," Mara said. "Release the inner stay, not the side seam." Vanessa gave a short laugh. "She read a few sewing notes and now she's directing my team." Mara finally looked at her. "If it's your structure," she said, "tell them where the stay is anchored." The question was quiet. That made it worse. Vanessa's face did not change much, but her eyes moved to the fitter. The fitter waited. Celia waited too. Vanessa said, "The construction team can handle it." "That wasn't the question," Celia said. The room tightened around the pause. Mara stepped closer, careful not to touch the gown without permission. She pointed to a spot just beneath the left side of the bodice. "There's a hidden anchor here. If they loosen it by 2 stitches and reset the tension along the curve, the pull will disappear." The head fitter hesitated, then lifted the inner lining just enough to check. Her expression changed before she could hide it. "There is an anchor," she said. Vanessa's jaw worked once. "Of course there is. It's a structured gown." Mara kept her voice even. "Then you knew not to alter the side seam." Celia stared at Vanessa in the mirror. This time, the bride did not look angry. She looked embarrassed for having trusted the wrong person so completely. Lily moved closer to the door, blocking the hallway view with her body. The head fitter adjusted the inner stay with 2 careful stitches. Celia inhaled, then stood straighter. The crease vanished. No applause, no dramatic gasp. Just the small, practical silence of a room where the truth had done something useful. Celia touched the place that no longer hurt. "How did you know?" she asked. Mara thought of Ruth bent over brown paper, refusing to flatten the curve. "My mother built the first one," she said. Vanessa snapped her phone shut. "This fitting is over," she said. "Celia, we need you in hair and makeup." Celia did not move. She looked at the inside of the gown, then at Mara's canvas bag. "What else did your mother leave you?" Before Mara could answer, A knock hit the door. A coordinator leaned in. Bellwether's sponsor rep just arrived. They want to confirm the closing look. Vanessa's smile returned, thinner now. Perfect, she said. Then let's not keep them waiting. Vanessa moved fast after the sponsor coordinator appeared. She sent Celia to hair and makeup. She told the fitter to document the adjustment as standard final shaping. Then she turned to Mara with a smile that did not belong in the room. You've had your moment, Vanessa said. Don't mistake it for permission. Mara did not answer. She watched Vanessa leave with the Bellwether coordinator, both women walking toward the VIP lounge where the sponsor packets waited. The moment the door closed, Lily touched Mara's sleeve. Come with me, she whispered. Mara followed her through a narrow passage behind the fitting rooms. The noise of the expo thinned into the hum of refrigerators, carts, and distant music checks. Lily stopped beside a stack of empty garment boxes and pulled out her phone. I shouldn't have this, she said. On the screen was a photo of a storage transfer sheet. Mara leaned closer. Vanessa Crane Bridal Archive Pull Request. Requested by V. Crane. Box ID, Rel No Cell. Description, Ruth Ellison, Celeste Development, Pattern plus Notes. Transfer location, Brand Suite B. Date, 1 week ago. For a few seconds, Mara forgot how to breathe. Ruth's name was there, not in Mara's memory. Not in a photocopy she had carried in a canvas bag. In Vanessa's own archive system, Lily's thumb trembled over the screen. I saw the box when I was cataloging old development materials. I thought it was just a contractor file. But after your emails came in, Vanessa asked me to search for anything with Ellison on it. She knew, Mara said. Lily nodded. Before today. The words did not make the betrayal new, they made it solid. Vanessa had not stumbled into a similar design. She had not been inspired by a vague old sketch. She had searched Ruth's name, pulled the box, kept the pattern source close, and still walked onto the expo floor calling Celeste a new exclusive design. Mara read the transfer sheet again, slower this time. Why didn't she destroy it? Because Bellwether requested provenance documentation for the sponsor archive, Lily said. Not public-facing, internal. They wanted a clean development trail before funding the collection. A bitter laugh caught in Mara's throat. So Vanessa needed my mother's box to prove the collection was legitimate. She needed pieces of it, Lily said. Enough to show a development trail. Not enough to show Ruth owned the structure. Mara understood the shape of the lie now. Vanessa was not hiding every trace of Ruth. She was shrinking Ruth into a footnote. Contractor support. Early technical reference. Archived development material. Anything except original creator. Lily swiped to another photo. It showed the side of a brown archive box, half hidden behind tissue rolls. Rel Zero Nove shell. Below that, in faded marker, Celeste do not flatten curve. Mara reached for the phone, then stopped before touching it. That sentence belonged to her mother's hand. Celeste wasn't Vanessa's name, Mara said. No, Lily replied. It was already on the box. Down the hall, a burst of applause rose from the expo floor. Someone had started the pre-runway program. Lily locked her phone quickly. Brand Suite B is locked, she said. Only Vanessa, her lead assistant, and Celia have temporary access because Celia's jewelry is being held there. Celia? She has a bride credential with suite clearance until the runway. Mara looked back toward the makeup rooms. Celia had asked what else Ruth left behind. That question had not sounded polite. It had sounded like a door opening. Lily touched Mara's arm again. If Vanessa sees that I showed you this, I'm done. No, Mara said. You were never here. Lily gave a shaky nod and slipped away before courage could cost her more. Mara stood alone beside the garment boxes, holding nothing but the knowledge that changed everything. The archive box was real. The name Celeste was Ruth's. And Vanessa had known before she ever smiled at the crowd. At the far end of the hallway, Celia Grant stepped out of hair and makeup wearing a silk robe over the gown's inner corset. She saw Mara. This time, she did not look away. Mara walked toward her and said, "I need you to see something before you wear that dress." Celia did not answer Mara right away. She looked down the hallway first, toward the VIP lounge where Vanessa had gone with the bellwether coordinator. Then she looked back at the fitting rooms, where stylists were waiting to turn her into the perfect bride for a dress she no longer trusted. "What do you need me to see?" Celia asked. Mara lowered her voice. "Brand Suite B." Celia's face changed. "Not fear, calculation. My jewelry is in there," she said. "And so is something Vanessa pulled from storage last week." Before Celia could respond, Vanessa's voice cut across the hall. "There you are." She walked toward them with Julian Price beside her and a bellwether folder tucked under one arm. Vanessa did not hurry. She did not need to. The closer she came, the more the hallway seemed to organize itself around her. Celia stepped half an inch away from Mara. Vanessa noticed. "Celia," she said gently, "you should be in makeup. We're minutes behind." Celia held her ground. "Mara says there's something in Brand Suite B." The warmth left Vanessa's eyes before it left her smile. "Mara says many things." Julian looked uncomfortable. "Miss Ellison, you are not authorized to approach talent." "She approached me," Celia said. That stopped him. Vanessa turned to Celia with the patience of someone explaining danger to a child. "This is exactly how she works. She finds emotional pressure points. Your wedding, your image, your desire to do the right thing. Then she pulls you into a private grievance that has nothing to do with you." Mara heard the trap closing. Vanessa was not attacking her loudly. She was making concern sound like protection again. Celia's jaw tightened. "Does Ruth Ellison's name mean anything to you?" Vanessa paused only long enough to make the pause look thoughtful. "She was a contractor," she said. Mara felt the word land like a hand against her chest. A contractor. Not Ruth. Not pattern maker. Not the woman whose handwriting still lived on the curve Vanessa was selling. "She developed the structure," Mara said. "She contributed to early technical exploration," Vanessa replied. "There is a difference." Lily had appeared at the far end of the hall, holding an empty garment bag. She stopped when she heard Vanessa's voice. Vanessa saw her too. That made her turn sharper. "And this," Vanessa said, looking back at Mara, "is why people like your mother never understood the industry. Talent is not ownership. A draft is not a collection. A sketch on a table is not a business." Mara did not move. Vanessa stepped closer and lowered her voice. "But not enough. Your mother made a draft," she said. "I made it a collection." Lily's hand tightened around the garment bag. Celia heard it too. The sentence did not sound like denial. It sounded like belief. At last, Vanessa stopped performing innocence. She explained herself. Julian looked between them, suddenly less certain of the folder he had signed. Vanessa recovered quickly. "Julian," she said, "please have security escort Miss Ellison to the lobby. If she continues interfering with talent, Bellwether will have every reason to question whether this summit can protect its partners." There it was. Not a threat to Mara. A threat to the event. Julian touched his earpiece. Celia spoke before he could call anyone. "I want to see Brand Suite B." Vanessa's smile thinned. "No." The word came too fast. Celia's eyes lifted. "You just said this has nothing to do with me," she said. "Then why can't I see what's in the suite holding my jewelry?" A coordinator ran past them, shouting that the pre-runway lights were being tested. Music thudded once through the wall. Time was shrinking. Vanessa looked at Celia, then at Mara, then at Julian. "Fine," she said at last. 5 minutes. Then the dress walks. Mara knew Vanessa had agreed too easily. So did Celia. But the door had opened. And for once, Vanessa was the one who had been forced to open it. Brand Suite B smelled like perfume, garment bags, and money. It was not large, but everything inside had been arranged to look important. Celia's jewelry case sat open on a white table. Sponsor packets were stacked beside champagne glasses. A rolling rack held backup gowns under cream covers. Near the back wall, half hidden behind a floral screen, sat 3 brown archive boxes. Mara saw the label before Vanessa could move. Rel Zero Nove Chel. Vanessa stepped in front of it. Those are internal materials. Celia looked at the box, then at Vanessa. Ruth Ellison, Celeste. Vanessa's tone sharpened. Contractor references. Nothing more. Mara took 1 step forward, then let her read the label. No, Vanessa said. The word was small, but it landed badly. Julian stood in the doorway, uncomfortable again. He had expected a misunderstanding. What he was seeing looked more like control. Celia closed her jewelry case. If I wear that gown, she said, my face goes on every clip, every sponsor post, every recap from tonight. So, I'm asking one more time, what is in that box? Vanessa checked the wall clock. You are about to ruin the biggest opportunity of your wedding year because a stranger showed you old paper. She fixed the dress, Celia said. You couldn't explain it. That cut deeper than Mara expected. Vanessa's assistant appeared behind them with the Celeste gown on a rolling form, ready for final transfer to the runway lineup. The bodice gleamed under the sweet lights. Beautiful. Controlled. Accusing nothing. Celia walked toward it. Vanessa caught her arm. Don't. Celia pulled away. She did not touch the lace first. She lifted the inner lining where Mara had pointed during fitting. The room seemed to shrink around the small, practical motion. Mara reached into her bag and took out the old fitting photo. Ruth Ellison stood in the image with a muslin bodice turned inside out, her fingers placed on the same crescent curve. Celia looked from the photo to the gown. Then she saw it. Inside the Celeste gown, beneath the polished lining, the seam curved like a thin moon under the left rib. The stitches had been refined, hidden, made expensive. But the structure was there. Moon seam, Celia said. Vanessa exhaled through her nose. That is a construction method. It does not belong to one woman. No, Mara said. One seam doesn't. But the pattern, the name, the invoice, the archive pull request, and the fitting photo together do. Celia turned to the archive box. Open it. Vanessa laughed once, without humor. You don't give orders here. No, Celia said. But you need me to walk. The hallway outside boomed with the first runway music test. Time pressed against the door. Vanessa held Celia's stare for 3 seconds, then snapped her fingers at her assistant. Open it. Show her the contractor file. The assistant hesitated, then cut the tape. The box did not contain the full pattern book. Vanessa had been careful, but she had not been careful enough. On top lay tissue, old muslin scraps, and a photocopied development sheet with Ruth's name reduced to a line near the bottom. Technical support, R. Ellison. Mara looked at the phrase. Technical support. That was how Vanessa planned to bury a creator. Celia picked up a muslin strip from the box. On its edge, in faded pencil, Ruth had written, "Do not flatten the curve." The same words Mara carried in the original pattern book. Celia's face changed. Not dramatic, not theatrical. Worse for Vanessa than both. Certain. A coordinator knocked hard on the open door. 2 minutes to line up. Vanessa snatched the muslin strip from Celia's hand. Enough. The gown walks now. Celia's eyes moved from the dress to the sponsor packets, then finally to Mara. If I walk, she said, I walk with the truth. Vanessa's voice dropped. Think. Very carefully. I am. Celia removed the pearl clips from her hair and placed them on the jewelry table. Then she faced Mara. What was your mother's full name? Mara answered without looking away from Vanessa. Ruth Ellison. Celia nodded once. Then I want someone to say it before I step onto that runway. The runway music began before anyone was ready. That was how Vanessa wanted it. Lights moved across the white stage. Brides lifted their phones. Sponsors leaned toward one another with practiced smiles. At the end of the runway, a screen bloomed with the words, Vanessa Crane Bridal. The Celeste gown. Julian Price stood near the side entrance, one hand pressed to his earpiece. He looked at Vanessa. Vanessa looked at Celia. Celia did not move. She stood behind the curtain in the gown, veil unpinned, pearl clips still on the jewelry table upstairs. Without them, she looked less like a campaign image and more like a woman trying to decide what kind of story her face would carry. Vanessa leaned close. Walk. Celia looked past her to Mara. Say her name. Vanessa's smile vanished. Then she stepped through the curtain herself. The applause started because people thought the show was beginning. Vanessa took the microphone from the host with a graceful laugh. Before our closing look, I want to thank everyone for supporting original bridal innovation. The Celeste gown represents months of work by our design house, our artisans, and our creative team. Mara heard the lie settle over the room like a clean white sheet. Original. Design house. Creative team. No Ruth. Vanessa continued. Unfortunately, there has been an attempt tonight to distract from that work with a private emotional claim. I want to assure our brides and partners that this design belongs fully to Vanessa Crane Bridal. A few people turned toward Mara near the side aisle. Julian looked at her too, but he did not call security. Not yet. Mara stepped forward with the catalog insert in one hand. If it belongs fully to your brand, she said, why was Ruth Ellison's name pulled from your archive last week? The microphone caught enough of her voice to carry it badly through the front rows. Not loud. Not clean. But enough. Vanessa did not flinch. This is not the place for personal grief, she said. No, Mara said. It's the place where you made the claim public. The first sponsor representative from Bellwether looked up from her folder. Mara held up the catalog insert. This says new exclusive design. Your sponsor packet says the same. Your screen says Celeste. But Celeste was the name on my mother's development file before tonight. Vanessa gave Julian a sharp glance. Julian touched his earpiece, then stopped when Celia stepped through the curtain behind Vanessa. The crowd reacted softly, confused by the bride appearing before the queue. Celia held the muslin strip in her hand. Vanessa turned. Celia, go backstage. No. It was not loud, but it was the first clean word of the night. Mara opened her bag and removed the photocopied pattern page. She did not wave it, she placed it on the small presentation table beside the runway stairs, where cameras from the front row could see the title. Celeste Left Inner Bodice. Revision 3. This is Ruth Ellison's pattern page, Mara said. Dated years before your collection. Here is the unpaid invoice your office called a courtesy fee. Here are the emails where Ruth sent construction notes to your brand. And here, she took Lily's printed transfer photo from her pocket, is your archive pull request. Box ID Rel 09 Cell, Ruth Ellison. Celeste Development, requested by V. Crane. 1 week ago. The room did not explode. That would have been easier for Vanessa. Instead, people began doing quiet, damaging things. A sponsor lowered her pen. A blogger zoomed in on the table. A seamstress near the curtain covered her mouth. Julian moved closer to the documents, no longer looking at Mara as a problem to remove. Vanessa laughed once. Internal archive language can be misleading. Ruth Ellison provided technical support years ago. That does not make her the designer of this gown. Mara looked at the screen behind Vanessa. The Celeste gown glowed there in perfect white. Then explain the sentence on the muslin, Mara said. Celia lifted the strip. Her hand shook, but she did not lower it. Do not flatten the curve, Celia read. Mara opened Ruth's original pattern book to the matching page. The same sentence sat there in pencil, written by the same hand. Your brand kept my mother's name when it needed her work, Mara said. You removed it when the room started clapping. Vanessa reached for a polished answer and found none. Then a voice came from behind the curtain. She's telling the truth. Everyone turned toward the alterations entrance. Eleanor Voss stepped into the light. Eleanor Voss did not look like someone who wanted a stage. She looked like a woman who had spent half her life making other people beautiful from the shadows and had learned to be afraid of rooms that asked her to speak. Vanessa saw her and went pale in a controlled way. Eleanor, she said, this is not necessary. The older seamstress kept walking until she reached the presentation table. Her eyes rested on Ruth's pattern page, then on the muslin strip in Celia's hand. I helped Ruth Ellison sew the first Celeste sample, Eleanor said. The microphone caught her voice unevenly, but the front rows heard enough. Vanessa turned to Julian. She is under a confidentiality agreement. Eleanor nodded. Yes. I was told not to discuss brand materials. She looked at Mara then, but Ruth was not brand material. The words moved through the room more quietly than applause, and more deeply. Mara had imagined this moment many times. In every version, she had been ready, stronger, cleaner, less affected. Instead, she had to press her fingers against the edge of the table to stay still. Eleanor continued. Ruth drafted the inner bodice. She corrected the crescent stay. She named the pattern Celeste because she said the seam had to hold the body the way moonlight holds water. Vanessa Crane Bridal received her notes, her sample pieces, and her construction file. Vanessa recovered enough to smile. Eleanor is describing early freelance support. That is common in design development. No one is erasing anyone. A small voice came from the curtain. You erased the box. Lily Harper stepped out with an empty garment bag still hanging from one hand. Vanessa's head turned slowly. Lily looked terrified. She spoke anyway. You asked me to search for Ellison files after Mara emailed the brand. You told me to move the Celeste archive box to Suite B. Then you told me to remove the creator label from the internal summary before Bellwether reviewed it. The Bellwether representative closed her folder. Not loudly. That was what made it final. Vanessa saw the motion and changed targets at once. Celia, she said, you are standing in a gown that could define your bridal campaign. Do not let someone else's family pain ruin what we built for you. Celia glanced down at the dress. For a moment, Mara thought the old dream would win, the cameras, the sponsor posts, the rare chance to be chosen by a luxury brand. Then Celia lifted the skirt just enough to step away from the runway entrance. What you built for me, she said, was a story where I had to look beautiful and not ask who disappeared underneath it. Vanessa's mouth tightened. You signed an appearance agreement. I signed to wear a gown, Celia said. Not a lie. A few phones were still raised. A blogger lowered hers, then lifted it again, slower, as if she now understood the story had changed. Julian moved to the host and quietly took the microphone. His voice was careful, but no longer useful to Vanessa. We're pausing the closing look, he said. Pending clarification of design credit. Vanessa stepped toward him. You cannot do that. I can pause my runway, Julian replied. He was not punishing her. He was simply no longer protecting the wrong version of events. Vanessa turned back to Mara, and the polish finally cracked. Your mother had no platform, she said. No investors. No reach. That pattern would have died in a drawer. Mara looked at the Celeste gown glowing beneath the screen. Then she looked at Ruth's handwriting on the table. My mother did not need you to make her work matter, she said. She needed you not to steal it. The words left Vanessa with nowhere elegant to stand. Celia handed the muslin strip to Mara. Eleanor placed the silver safety pin beside it. Lily set her garment bag down and stepped away from Vanessa's side of the curtain. One by one, the people Vanessa had used as cover stopped covering her. The Bellwether representative tucked the unsigned sponsor contract back into her folder. We will not proceed tonight, she said. The audience did not cheer. That would have made it smaller. Instead, the runway lights stayed on, the screen still read the Celeste gown, and beneath it, on a small white table, Ruth Ellison's name sat in pencil where everyone could finally see it. The runway did not end with applause. It ended with the music fading out while the lights stayed on too bright. For several seconds, the crowd seemed unsure what kind of ending they had witnessed. Brides lowered their phones. Sponsors closed their folders. A photographer checked his screen, then stopped scrolling when he saw the pattern page on the table beside the gown. Vanessa Crane left the stage with Julian Price walking beside her, not touching her, not escorting her like a criminal, only making sure the event could continue without her hand on the microphone. That mattered to Mara. She did not want sirens. She did not want a scene big enough for Vanessa to turn into victimhood by morning. She wanted one small thing returned to the right place. A name. Backstage, the Celeste gown was placed on a dress form instead of Celia's body. Without the runway lights chasing it, the gown looked quieter. Still beautiful. Still wounded. Celia stood near the mirror in her robe, arms folded across herself. "I'm sorry," she said. Mara was tired enough that the words reached her late. "You didn't know." "I didn't want to know," Celia said. "There's a difference." Mara turned to her then. Celia's makeup was still perfect, but her face had lost the easy brightness Vanessa had built around her. She looked younger, or maybe just more honest. Eleanor came in carrying a small sewing tin. She set it on the table without ceremony. "I kept something," she said. Inside, wrapped in a piece of old muslin, was a pearl pin. Its head was small and cream-colored, dull from years of use. "Ruth gave it to me after we finished the first Celeste sample," Eleanor said. She said every difficult curve deserved one pretty thing. Mara picked up the pin carefully. The metal had warmed in Eleanor's hand. Julian entered a moment later, holding the incorrect runway card. The one that read, "The Celeste Gown Vanessa Crane Collection." He looked at Mara. "I can't undo what was printed tonight." "No," Mara said. "But I can correct what remains on display." He handed her a blank card. No speech, no official apology in front of a crowd. Just paper, waiting. Mara took a pen from the table. Her hand shook once before she wrote, "Original pattern Ruth Ellison." Beneath it, in smaller letters, she added, "Completed from the surviving Celeste development notes." She did not write stolen. She did not write justice. She did not need to. Celia helped lift the inner lining while Eleanor held the fabric steady. Mara pinned the card inside the gown, just below the moon seam, where anyone who cared enough to look closely would find it. The pearl pin went through the card, through the lining, and into the place Vanessa had tried to make invisible. Mara stepped back. All night, people had questioned her right to be near the gown. Now the question was gone. 1 year later, the bridal summit opened a smaller room behind the main expo floor. There were no chandeliers there, no champagne tower, no giant sponsor wall, just independent makers standing beside their work, explaining seams, fabrics, repairs, and old techniques to brides who wanted to know the hands behind the gowns. At the center of the room stood the Celeste gown. Not under Vanessa's name. Not under a luxury campaign. A small sign beside it read, "The Ruth Ellison Independent Pattern Grant." Funded by Celia Grant and Bellwether House. Mara did not stand in front of the display. She stood beside it, where her mother would have stood, close enough to fix anything that needed care. A young bride leaned toward the gown and noticed the card pinned inside. She read it softly. "Original pattern Ruth Ellison." Mara reached out and straightened the tag by the width of a thread. This time, no one corrected the name.